right, welcome everybody. Today is Tuesday, February 24th, 2026. The time is 4:18 p.m. and we are convened as the Provo City School Board of Education. We are meeting at 280 West, 940 North in Provo, Utah, and we will begin with a roll call. I'm Jennifer Partridge, Board President.
Gina Hills, Board Vice President.
Melanie Hall, Board Member.
Lisa Boyce, Board Member.
Megan Wagner, Board Member.
Rachel Rue, Student Board Member.
Haley Lindstrom, Student Board Member.
Emily Harrison, Board Member.
Sharon McCabe, Board Member.
Devin Daly, Business Administrator.
Wendy Dow, Superintendent.
All right, thank you. We want to welcome everybody else that is here with us today. And do we have a motion to convene our study session?
I move that we convene our study session.
Okay, motion made by Board Member Boyce. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Harrison. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are now in our study session. And we will begin with our board member training, and today that is by our student board member, Rachel Rue.
Okay, for the board training, it's on pages 4 and 5. I noticed that it said a vibrant learning environment where all students become lifelong learners and engaged community members. So as a student board member, I think like the word all is something that I come back to. I've seen our board members always bring up who we're missing in the conversation or what type of students or demographics that aren't included. And so I think for my personal reflection, I rely a lot on our Student Advisory Council and my student government classes, but always trying to remember that there's students outside of those communities that I can also think about. When I also looked at the core values, I saw strong belonging, wellness, and safety. And I do definitely believe that students perform better when they feel safe and connected. I've seen a lot of those topics be brought up in Student Advisory Council meetings. So we've talked about school spirit and community, school dance safety, and the cell phone policy safety as well, about being able to contact parents in scary or difficult situations. Also, stewardship of resources is seen through our budgeting right now, and it all connects to benefiting all the students and guarding public trust by spending our funds to benefit all of our children. And finally, our legal responsibilities, the board reminds me that the authority rests in our constituents and that we're supposed to be vessels for them, and that my position or our positions shouldn't be used to promote our personal opinion, and to represent, at least on my side and Bailey's side, all of our student perspectives. So that's what I took away from that.
Great. All right, that's great highlight of that. Thank you so much, Rachel. All right, we will move on to our next item, which is our TIPU construction update, and we're going to turn that over to Josh from Westland.
So that we don't have a clicker, but she can advance it for you.
Oh, you got
Just say click.
Point that anywhere, I'll try to guess and you'll say, no, go back.
All of this. All of the above.
So Josh is here in place of Trent. Trent's sick today, but he is awesome, so.
Yeah, Trent's been sicker than dog. I've also got
and Tom is
Preston
here
with
too,
me.
yes.
But yeah, so TIPU, we're happy to give this progress support. And so moving on to the next slide here. Let's start in the cafeteria. And so in the last month, if you go to the next slide, in the lunchroom, we've had quite a few achievements. We've been doing a lot of the wall tile on the inside all around here. And it goes, if you look left, it's the whole lunchroom. We've been doing a lot of the wall tile on the columns here. The ceiling grid has been completed as of today. This has been a big goal of ours, just because once you have the ceiling grid in, then you can really start looking forward to getting the LVT flooring in, which starts in 2 weeks. And then you have these really cool soffits that run the whole length of the cafeteria, and they have lights in them. And we've been getting those lights installed as well. So go to the next. So right when you walk out of the lunchroom into the serving line area where these roll-up doors are, we've been doing this. We've installed all the wall tile. We've had the millwork show up on site, so we're we're getting ready to install that. The ceiling grid is also installed in here, and so we're doing all the rough in electrical, getting lights in, so that we can drop all the ceiling tile in there as well. And in the kitchen area, this is where there's a lot of work happening to hook up all the cooking equipment. So we've had our kitchen guys on site, our electrical, our plumbers, our mechanical, hooking up all these systems. Our ceiling grid is going to tie in right up here, as well as there's some more kitchen wall tile that we're going to be installing in there as well. So it's coming along really nicely, and that's pretty much it for the inside. In the basement, we're getting ready to clean up and epoxy the floor, which will leave the boiler room, the storage room down there with a much cleaner look than what was there before. And moving on to the exterior. Last time we didn't have any of the metal panels up, and so we're going on. We have all the corrugated metal panel up. This week we started the ACM panel that comes up. It's the same panel that you see along the whole rest of the school here, but so that'll look really cool as it comes backside here. And then we've also had the GFRC panels, which is like a reinforced concrete panel. And we chose this panel because as you're snow plowing, you want something pretty hard and durable as the snow pushes up against it. If it was the ACM panel, it would just kind of crumple. But yeah, the exterior is coming along really well. Is there any questions for the cafeteria?
No, but the exterior does look great, like it looks cohesive with the other parts.
Yeah, if you actually go back, I think we mentioned this last time we were here, but the stain we did on the outside of the building, it looks way better than we could have ever hoped it would. And so it looks really cohesive with the rest of the school.
And I want you to know I tested out the freezer. When you go in the freezer, you can get out. It was pretty fun. It wasn't on, so there was no danger to my person, but it was, they're doing a fabulous job. I think we're still waiting for the rest of the wall tile in the kitchen, right?
Yes,
that's supposed to be here in a week or two.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the hold up on that part, because most of it, what you have has been done for a couple weeks.
Yeah, with the wall tile that showed up, we put it in places that we really needed it to get our finishes in. And so,
Can you remind me when the cafeteria is supposed to be done?
Yes, it'll be done May 5th.
This year?
Yes, this year.
Okay.
So in the next few months. Yep.
Okay, good.
Yep. We had our update
Poor
today.
Rachel. Yeah. You won't get to see it very much.
I can see it here, it's okay.
May 5th, but I think the plan is, as of now, it won't actually be used until next year or in August. But it will be ready for you guys to use if you need it earlier.
One of the thoughts is to do some of the testing in the beginning of May once it's available, so that it's away from some of the construction noise. But Momi's been pretty pleasantly surprised with how little construction noise. I mean, you can still hear it, but it's not nearly as bad as what they were expecting.
Winning.
So we are winning. So anytime we can make things better than expectations, we're in good shape. But they really have done a great job. It does look like a beautiful cafeteria. So.
Thank you. Yeah, so moving on now to our performing arts phase, the auditorium. So first, we took over the site. We've painted all the striping for the new traffic. This is our parent drop off here, and I think the first week or so it was a little difficult to get all the parents to understand the new pattern, but from what we've heard talking with Momi, that the parents, the public are really starting to figure it out, and there's not many hiccups with that anymore. But yeah, so this last month, we really showed up full force, ripping up all the parking, all the site lights, the concrete, and it's been quite busy there. And so right now what we're trying to do is we are going up to the existing wall here into prep for what's called shotcrete. And so right here is where the auditorium is going, but if we dig out all of the dirt here, you would undermine this building. And so it's like we have to be very conscious of this. And so this is a little detail here. Everything in red is where the shotcrete is going, which is like kind of like a liquefied concrete. So we're going to do that in steps where we dig out underneath the footing, shoot concrete into it, tie the foundation in with soil nails, so nothing comes out, and then we're going to do that in 5-foot lifts. So go 5 feet, 5 feet, 5 feet, and it's going to be a pretty big process, but we'll get through it, no problem. We actually have a pre-construction meeting tomorrow with the architect, the engineers, our subcontractors, to just get everyone on the same page with how we're going to do it, making sure that we're following all the steps we need to. And then on the inside, near the commons, well, in the commons, we have now closed off the main entry, the old main entry, and we've put up this pretty wall. Looks like it's belonged there the whole time, and this was to basically totally seal ourselves off from any sort of students from walking in, trying to make it pretty, so that when you're in the commons, it doesn't look like things are under construction. And we are looking at tearing off this vestibule during spring break, and so we're not really trying to impede on classroom time.
Like all the noisy stuff.
Yeah, we're trying to get rid of the whole vestibule in a week, but really get out all the noisy stuff in a week and go from there. Yeah, is there any questions for this phase or the cafeteria?
With the shotcrete wall, that slide also mentions helical piers. Are those going in just at those connection points, or are they going, I can't remember, are they going in for the whole wing?
So if you go back to that slide, yep, right here, what we're going to be doing, we're pulling away all the dirt from the foundation wall, and this wall already sits on a lot of helical piers. And so what we're going to need to do, well, without getting too far into the details here, we're going to need to reinstall piers under this wall before we shotcrete it. And so we're trying to work out the best process to accomplish this.
And then will there be piers under the performing arts
Yes,
wing?
yeah, there's a lot of piers over
Okay.
there. Yeah, we're not going to be doing anything that will compromise any structural elements.
Great.
So are you pulling out the existing piers on just that first part of that wall that you're going to be reinstalling?
So this wall has piers in it that go to the west and to the east.
Okay.
And so we're going to be pulling out all of the west piers so that we can shotcrete it. But before we shotcrete it, we're going to cut those west piers, put in vertical piers, so they're not kicking out into the shotcrete wall.
Okay.
So
Process.
it's a process.
Any other questions? All right, Josh, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. We hope
Appreciate
the
it.
track gets feeling better.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda is our school committee council request updates from the traffic safety committee, and we'll turn it over to Jared Seitz, our assistant superintendent.
Recently, the Traffic Safety Committee met to review some requests that came from two of our school community councils, and I'd like to report back to you on those. One of them, from Centennial Middle School, requested several upgrades, infrastructure changes throughout the city to make traffic crossing safer. Vern Kiesler met with their school community council, reviewed those individually with them, and we've communicated back to Centennial which of those were approved. The reason I'm here today, though, is that the school community council from Provo Peaks has requested a courtesy bus route to address some areas that they considered hazardous. We met as a traffic safety committee to review that, and there's a couple of documents here, and so Bonnie, if you could open up that first one, actually. Apologize, this traffic safety committee report one. In blue here, you'll see specifically the two requests that they had made. They requested a bus route that would include picking up students south of 3rd South and east of 900 East. There are 75 students that live south of 300 East, and there are 34 students that live east of 900 East. We met as a committee. Vern Kiesler is actually going to meet with them tomorrow, the school community council at Provo Peaks. And I'd like to walk you through some of the information that was considered, and then I'll share with you the recommendation of that. So, Bonnie, could you go to the 3rd and 4th? Not this one, you can go to the next one down. So this is the area south of, so this isn't showing up on here very well. So here's 3rd South, okay? There are 74 households south of 3rd South here, and there are 74 students that reside there. Currently, on their Safe Routes to School plan, they're directed to cross here at this quirky intersection at State Street and 3rd South, 700 East. It's really a quirky spot.
It's a nice way to put it.
Yeah, it's quirky, it's kind of, you know, and the city in the last year did 2 traffic studies, and there were 3 pedestrians that crossed one day and 5 the next. So it doesn't warrant a crossing guard. There's not the usage there. Currently along, I'd like to just pivot and show you the other area on 900 East as well. There are 34 students that live east of 900 East. And here they are in the yellow and red in this section right here. Currently, these students are directed to walk south and cross at the 4-way stop at Center Street. Okay? They'll walk along 900 East on a well-established sidewalk. They'll cross here, and then they'll work their way over to the school. And so the request from the council was to address these 2 areas, feeling that they were hazardous routes to cross at. And so as a traffic safety committee, as we met with Provo City Engineering and we met with the police department, there were a couple things to consider. And I think these maps, the detail aren't as good, and so I've asked Bonnie if she could share with you a Google map image that shows this area, okay? Pointer, I was so excited it works, but it doesn't show up on here. So, if you could go to, somehow get us to a full screen. So here's Provo Peaks, okay? Here's 3rd South. Here's that quirky intersection we're talking about. Along 300 South at 200 East, there we are, there's a 4-way stop. Students can come and they can press
There's a
a
light,
crossing
yeah.
signal. There is a light. It's a 4-way stop. There's another 4-way stop at 400 East where students can, again, you know, they can light a signal that will allow them to cross. 600 East, there's a pedestrian crossing, not stoplights, but any pedestrian has the ability to push a button and the yellow signs will flash and they can cross on the south side, or excuse me, the west side of the street. There's also a crosswalk here at that quirky section of 700 East. Closer to the school, there is a crosswalk right here at 600 East in front of the school that has a crossing guard.
And it has beacons.
And it has beacons as well. Again, over here on 900 East, the only place that has an area to cross is at Center Street. Again, it's a 4-way stop.
It's a light right there.
There's a stoplight. The mindset of the city is to always have students cross at a 4-way stop, not mid-block. Their concerns had been that students needed to cross over here at 200 North or 150, and there are no crossing areas there at all. And the city does not intend to address that, though they're willing to have a conversation tomorrow. With those factors in place, there are 3 potential safe spots to cross 3rd South currently. And there is a feasible way for those 34 students to cross at East Center Street. The Traffic Safety Committee does not recommend funding that request for a courtesy bus route.
Remind me, at the Center Street light though, is there a crossing guard in the morning there?
I went by there this afternoon, I did not see
Yeah,
one
so
this
when I cross in
afternoon,
the
so
morning.
with the 4-way stop, there is a crossing guard right over here.
Yes, okay.
At 700, and they're actually considering about making some adjustments there right now.
I believe it used to have a crossing guard at Center and 900, but because there's so
Again,
few students,
so few
they
students.
place them in an area where there's more
That's
students
correct.
to
Sure, because
cross.
I do see a few on their bikes crossing, because I go to grab some.
And as I talked with Vern Kiesler, same thing's happening over at Spring Creek right now. There's been some questions about crossing guards, and the usage of our crosswalks are just so minimal right now. A minimum of 10 would justify them to take action to add a paid employee to be a crossing guard. But a lot of our folks are driving their students to school. Again, a similar situation at Lakeview. I know there were some conversations about improving a crosswalk near Provo High School, which would potentially inadvertently reduce the number of students using the one at Lakeview, which then might lead to them not staffing it again.
This is just like a thought that I am curious, like, in talking with the city, right? If there were crossing guards, though, would more people would they be willing to cross? This isn't something for you to
Yeah,
answer. I'm
it's-
just voicing
it's one
that. It's
that-
like you build it and then they come, because I get it's like I'm not going to let my
Yeah.
kid cross there. There's no crossing guard,
Correct.
but that's something I can ask.
Well, we feel strongly that there are 3 safe options to cross here. Perhaps not the most ideal, but they are safe, and the committee did not recommend that we fund that. Those are the 2 different asks, one from Centennial that I talked about. And again, Vern Kiesler's been very proactive in going to school committee council meetings. He hasn't been to all of them, but he's able to talk through and share with people. One of the other things that he's working on right now, this road, UDOT, it's not owned by Provo City. And so the goal is to create this 400 East as a school crossing walk, which would then allow them to create a school zone along 3rd South. We also feel strongly that we need to let that play out as well. And with those improvements, we feel like it's not warranted.
Melanie?
With the Centennial improvements, do we know what those were or what?
I'd be happy to share those with you. I don't have them
Okay,
in my
that's
mind
fine.
right now, but there's a couple of locations where they're going to be adding, again, pedestrian, better lighting when they push a signal, and it will flash and allow for a safer crossing area. And I believe there are 3 locations that, one we've already talked about there, right in front of Rock Canyon, and 2 other locations.
Okay, great.
One other thing to keep in mind on an annual basis, one of the things that you'll do is review other courtesy bus routes around the city, and Devin and Troy will bring that to you at the all-day board meeting at the end of March.
Jared, I do have another question. So I know you came prepared to talk just about these 2 schools, but do we have other schools who've requested things? And would you be able at some point to provide us with updates on those
We only have
requests?
2 formal requests that came to the Traffic Safety Committee from those 2 schools. There were a lot of informal questions that came to Vern when he was meeting with people, and he would have provided a response. He's taken some action, but the 2 schools who formally submitted something were just these 2.
Okay,
and-
because I know one of my schools has a request, so maybe they don't know how to submit it formally then, so I'll talk to you about
I
that.
would be happy to
Okay.
visit with them, and Vern is happy to consider things mid-year as well.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
And last Wednesday, the West Side neighborhood put in a request for a traffic study right in front of Provo High School.
For that crossing guard.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Assistant Principal Allred was there to do the presentation.
Okay. Lisa?
Yeah, so do you want to give an update?
Oh, I was just going to say, Lisa and I, were you at community council?
Mhm.
No. They were going to put a stoplight at Quail Valley and Timview Drive, and that has been tabled for the moment, just so you're aware. Why?
Yeah.
Because the neighborhood
Neighborhood.
revolted, is a pleasant way to say it. Anyway, they are going, but Vern has mentioned that he came to both Edgemont Community Council and Timpview Community Council and mentioned that if there's even one accident or two more accidents which will warrant, that stoplight will go in regardless.
So we just need to pay somebody
To have, so you don't want accidents, but he was trying to be proactive and to, for
And he was
safety.
trying to help us with the bus situation that we're gonna have as we close down more of that part zone.
I read the notes from, I think, the neighborhood meeting or something, and they were suggesting that the neighborhood didn't think it was worth having a light there all the time when
Right,
it's
it's only
just
busy.
2 times of the day where we have the
Yeah.
traffic.
But he was just trying to be proactive, because it didn't warrant, there's like 8 levels, and there was only one that warranted it, and that was for school crossing. And, but he said as soon as there's enough accidents, that light will go in regardless of what the neighborhood wants.
All right. Thank you, Jared. It was going to eliminate quite a bit of parking, and I think that was one of the concerns that we heard from people along the street.
Because it was gonna,
Yeah.
because they were gonna
Create
create
a
a
lane.
left-hand turn lane.
Anyway, so it was going to eliminate quite a bit of parking, and then I think that plus the light being on, there were neighbors really concerned, and
Yeah, I mean, it does change.
I felt like Vern really tried hard, and he had put together a proactive plan, so now he's going to wait and then act when he can justify it. Thank you. All right, our next item is our budget discussion. So at our last meeting, we spent a lot of time and made some decisions on the budget. And I believe, is it the budget discussion final?
Yes.
Yes.
And
Okay, and I'm going to turn over to Wendy now, even though it has my name on it, because you're
Here we go, I'm ready, I'm ready to roll.
okay.
So I'm going, oh, it's making me do an error. So rude. Like I forgot who I was. Here we
Do you even know me?
go. Do you even know me? Oh, I'm terrible at that game. We've already
No,
established that.
I'm the only one who's terrible at that game.
No, I think I'm still as bad. Okay, so this first page here, and I also did attach into board book the email that Caleb sent out to the community, so that, because we recognize that that's only going to go to people who have students within our district, so we attached it to board book so that people could see kind of what the discussions were and what's still on the table. This page right here is kind of a summary of some of the budget decisions that we had. And Devin, I'm going to ask you for this number on the restructure of school nursing. We had originally had that at $150,000, but I believe that number is $250,000 now. So because of how we have restructured their contracts and moved in that direction. And then we had, there was another one that I was looking at. Let's see if I have all the others right. The FTE savings in elementary, we are still determining the overall savings. We went through as a cabinet and determined the FTE at every single school, looked at like grade levels that needed to be bumped because of class sizes and different pieces like that. Principals are going to be getting those forms on Thursday. So as of right now, we had originally talked about where we have a guaranteed 2 classes, and as I was trying to go through, I think we had originally said 6 FTE. I think it's a little bit less than that at this point. And so we're sitting at about $2.6 million in savings. So we're in a good space, because we had talked about that with the truth in taxation, if the board votes to proceed with that, and then $2 million in savings, it lowers that tax request that we would be making so that we could make up the $4 million difference that we need total in the budget. Now, if we want to add more things to it, like significant pay raises and cost of insurance and all of that, then there will have to be additional cuts that come through that. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So other discussion items now, I did want to talk a little bit about, Nate Edwelson had discussed the idea of increasing the caseload files at the high schools because they're particularly low. We had originally put that at 220,000. He is asking for an FTE to go towards supporting the special ed specialist team that's going out and supporting in different schools. So I lowered that amount because we're just reconstituting that FTE to continue to support in special education as a result of that. And then we had also talked about reducing the discretionary school budgets. So I put together a document last night, and you can, let me see if I can put up the right one. Oh yeah, I need to make that way bigger. All that's happening. So I'm gonna go to the front and just show you a couple of things so you can kind of see this. So what I did was I took the enrollment for this year of each of the schools, and then took, if we're giving them $330 per student for that enrollment, this is how much flows into each school's like 0060 or their discretionary account. This is how much they received in trust lands. This is how much they received in TSSA. So this is total their discretionary spending. They use a lot of this money to pay for instructional assistants. They may go in at a high school and I may pay for extra periods, right, to help lower class sizes in core classes. There's a lot of different ways. It's usually used for personnel. I mean, that's especially TSSA and trust lands. The discretionary budget can be used on a variety of things. So what I wanted to show you was, because of the enrollment drop that is happening, so you'll see that we're going from 12,940 students to 12,664 students. I took, if we kept that funding the same, and I did not make adjustments to TSSA because I didn't know what the TSSA amount was going to be, Devin, for this coming year, but I feel like they froze that amount. And so I got the updated amounts of trust lands, but I wanted you to see what that comparison would be. So then I went through, and then this is the difference that is occurring. So most schools are not seeing a decrease, except you do see a couple here. You'll see Franklin going down by over $6,000 because their enrollment is in decline. You see Independence High projected to go down. I think that's Provost. Wow, a whopping $391 right there, but then minus $9,000 for Westridge just because of those enrollment issues. That's if we kept the funding exactly the same. So just so you can keep that in perspective. Yeah, then flip on the next tab. So we had talked about, what if we reduced that amount to $300 a student instead, kept all of this 2026 numbers, put that all in, and then this shows you how much those principals will lose across the board if we lower it by $30 a student. You can see that the more students you have, obviously, the more money you're losing in that process. So ranging from a few $1,000s all the way up to $54,000 for Timpview. Okay. And if you go one more over to 280, you start to notice this number getting quite large. So you'll start to see $100,000 difference, a $77,000 difference. I believe that's Provo High. And so that I know when I show this to principals, they're going to have a heart attack, right? So that will happen. So we will have medicine and help them through the process. So one of the things that we had talked about is, because we have reduced the FTE equity. Most schools are seeing a decline in the amount of FTE that they're being allotted because their enrollment is going down, right? And in addition, we increased the class size for high school from 28 to 1 to 28.5 to 1. We feel like we've asked the schools to do a lot with respect to FTE. So in my mind, I get really nervous. I personally get really nervous about this $280 amount. I think this should be a kind of, we press pause on this till we see what happens with the legislature and where our revenue actually comes in. I want principals to see this so that they know what could happen if it goes really bad. But this number, if you'll click back over here, Devin, feels a little more doable in terms of that. And Devin has said that then they can carry over the balances that they have. And so they could give them a target like, oh, I need to carry over this amount to compensate for what I've lost over last year. And that seems like that's absorbable, if you will.
And for, just for clarity, the amount that they could have carried over last year on what they didn't spend was about $650,000. So the ability to carry that much over is not necessarily outside of the realm of possibility.
Okay.
Also, in the past, that also included, the 330 included substitute teachers that had to come out of that account. I pulled that out separately and still gave them $330. So they were given a significant amount more of discretionary dollars this year that weren't impacted by subs as much. We're trying to get a handle on subs externally from having those schools that have some teachers that are gone perpetually from being impacted as much as other schools that don't. So that's one of the reasons that we did that, but that helps give some clarity.
So I just wanted to put that out there. It is an option that we have on the table. You'll notice that it has the differing amounts. If you go to if you drop it to the $300 per student, this saves almost $400,000 in the budget. I think it's $379,000, something like that.
Right there.
And then if you do the 280, we could drop it even to 250. But when I started looking at those numbers, I started hyperventilating. So I don't love that. So
can you just give, outside of like the personnel for like our trust lands, TSSA, what are some things that this discretionary money is used for? I mean, maybe that's a hard question.
Tell you.
Go ahead, Daryl.
Technology, training, professional development, things like that to improve the structure.
Like in our, is like school supplies or
copier maintenance,
not really,
water machines in the buildings, t-shirts.
No.
Okay.
What else did you use your 060 budget for, Jared?
Just consumable things that come up.
So Wendy, oh sorry,
Consumables.
Okay.
More consumable things that are used.
So you said we'll kind of pause and decide later, but I know that principals and teachers are watching. And they just get stressed that we're talking about understandably, right? So I think I just want to add to the conversation that we need to, at some point, then to talk about what are we adding back in, like you mentioned, insurance. What would we use the savings for other than decreasing our taxes? Are we going to give a raise? And then I think we need to decide where's the balance there, right? Is it worth reducing what's going to the schools and maybe making things tight on them for whatever the gain is on the other side, or not, right? So
that's going to be the larger conversation. And I have a meeting with Christy, I think Thursday, and so we're going to talk through some of those, kind of where the association is coming in on what some of their budgeting priorities are, and that can help too. And kind of what their thoughts are on, like, no, this is not really a negotiable item, and here's where we're willing to kind of look through some things and that type of thing. So we wanted this in front of principals so that as they're getting their FTE and then they're looking at those budgets and they're looking at how they're going to be spending their land trust, they know what their current situation is and what it could be, just in case, so that they can plan for it.
So the timing of that decision, though, on our part might impact their ability to let someone know they're staying on as an instructional assistant, et cetera, right, pretty soon. So I feel like if the board does have a direction on this specific line item, it feels like the sooner we could help to give that, the better, because I just think we don't want to lose our good employees that we want to keep, and if they're uncertain about whether or not that position's going to stay there, they're going to have to start looking now because they know how quickly positions will fill elsewhere. I don't know that timing exactly, but I just want to be sensitive to that. And
I think that's smart. I think one of the things that I would look at is when you're looking at the amounts that are showing up in these budget differences here, when I'm looking at this amount and I'm looking at, okay, a difference for Amelia is 8,000, that isn't even the cost of one instructional assistant. So if I can carry over that amount, so, you know, and Devin, you can speak more to this. To me, an instructional assistant that's a 29 hours, probably a
About
$25,000 cost because we don't pay benefits for those individuals. So as long as I want them to have this number, so because as I went in and looked at many of their budgets, they still have quite a bit of money that they're working through, right? It doesn't mean they're not going to spend it. But if there are things that they're making choices about from now to the end of the year, that can help them so that they could carry that over and make sure that those employees that they need are going to be able to remain. So that's really I know it feels like every time I talk to our employees, I just create more angst for them, and that's really not what I'm trying to do. I'm really trying to help them have some better information as they're making some decisions about what to do. So. And I do think, you know, as you see, as they'll look at their FTE and things that are happening, they will have to go in and use TSSA and Land Trust to say, for this teacher, it's going to have to be paid out of TSSA or Land Trust to be able to create 3 teachers at this grade level or whatever. So.
And a significant portion of 0060 is not necessarily used for salaries.
No.
Like right now, about 12% of what's been spent, or what's budgeted, has been spent on salaries. We're more than halfway through the school year. So for reference, the trust lands and the TSSA, which is not on the list of cuts and which we increased trust lands significantly, that is going to bear most of the cost of the people.
Before you go to the next one, I did have a question on the special ed.
Yeah.
So when we looked at the original proposals, the big spreadsheet, there was both this way of savings, but there was also a request for more funding. And we also generally hear that our special ed teachers have a big load. And so I would just love to understand better how we can cut in special ed and still meet the needs of the students, especially at high schools. I feel like have fallen short, at least in the past, of meeting the needs of our students.
So the situation that's happening at the high school is that you do have very small caseloads. So the piece of this that they need support with is the instructional side. They need support with ensuring that there are transition plans and pieces like that are put in place. That's what the district person would do, that Nate is putting into place. That is why we want to add, right now, we're probably, and Devin's going to correct me when I'm wrong, because I will definitely be wrong. So as the government gives us money for special ed, we're right now, if I remember correctly, over $1 million pulling from the general fund to help subsidize that at this point.
It's right around $1 million.
$1 million.
I mean, for this year, yes, it'll be over $1 million.
So if we kept that amount, as I've talked with Nate, he would like to see an increase of that by a few individuals to support his district team. His district team's getting pretty exhausted in terms of how they're supporting out in schools, in particular with behaviors, just really tricky IEPs. That support is where they're getting drained really fast. We also have an individual that is retiring that has been specific to special education, and we're not suggesting that money as a savings. We're just reallocating that individual into special ed. So we want to make sure that we're keeping those funds so that as needs come up, that we can say, well, we need to have an aid in this particular situation. Like we have a situation that's coming up, like Jared and I were talking today. We have a situation today where we may need an additional aid just because of the demands that happen. So we want to have a buffer in there, so that's the reason for that. The high school caseload is significantly out of proportion. The elementary and middle schools are significantly more burdened at this point than the high schools, and I can get you, I know he would be happy to provide me with like what are the caseloads at the elementary level and for every school, so you can see that laid out. He has all of that so that we can see what that impact is.
I just want to make sure we were thoughtful. It sounds like you've been thoughtful about that, and I don't know that we need to take the extra time to write it all down. Okay.
The other thing that we put into this budget was right now, currently our administrators, district administrators, as well as school-based administrators, because they get 20 vacation days because they're on a 244-day contract, a lot of administrators do not use all of their vacation. They're only allowed to carry over 10 days from any given year. And so as that happens for individuals that sometimes are working a lot, we have allowed them to, where we buy back some of that vacation time, and we've allowed them to, they're selling back to us, if you will, for vacation days. So we thought if we cut that in half, we did that so you could only sell back 2, then that would generate $135,000. That felt fair in the sense that we're asking counselors to reduce the number of work days, we're asking instructional coaches to reduce work days. It just doesn't feel equitable that these other individuals are being asked to do those things and administrators are not. We know that everybody is working really hard and we have to share this across the board. So we felt like that was a good place to start. If we needed to go to the total 4 days, then we could do that at some point, but prefer not to start out of the gate with that. So.
Yeah, one question I have about that, are there other, I mean, I remember the conversation and I've been talking to a couple of people about like the reduction in days with our counselors, et cetera. Are there other professionals who have days over the summer? I'm specifically thinking about social workers, I think, from our schools.
Yeah.
Like, are those days, do they need them all? Like, I don't have a scope of their practice over the summer, so I don't know that. But I just wanted to raise that question because we have talked about other, coaches and people over the summer.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So there's 2 different ways that we do a contract, and Devin's also going to pipe in when I get this wrong too. But for most individuals, we do a 186-day base contract, and then we do additional days. Those additional days are not part of the base contract, so they can be reduced at any point in time. In our policy, it says you're not guaranteed those specific days, so we can adjust that amount. Social workers are on a 202-day contract. Those are not additional days. So if we were to do a reduction in their days, we'd actually have to renegotiate their contract, which goes through a whole process
Similar
of
to what
policy.
we do with nurses.
Yes.
Okay.
So we can look at that. I
That's
will
fine.
say that in talking with Jason Garrison, one of the things that they do utilize social workers for is to keep connections with families over the summer. I do recognize that we probably need to look at it in the future, as there are some schools that might not need 202 days, and there are some schools who might need more than 202 days. So is it something where we need to realign that? And Jason, do you want to add anything that I've misspoken or said anything?
No, you did great.
Okay. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. And I'm actually glad you brought that up because I had several emails about it. Like, why are social workers exempt from this? So I feel good about that. The other thing I wanted to add is just why have athletics not been included in the budget discussions? I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but I just added some bullet points here. Students do pay to participate at the high school level in athletics, and they pay a participation fee. That helps pay for the officials. It runs events. I don't think people recognize how many people are on site to actually run a volleyball game. You have to have scorekeepers, and you have people are holding the flag in the corner to show when the ball is out, and all of the different components that go into this, and we have to pay for those individuals. They have a player pack fee, which pays for like warm-up gear, and they have a uniform fee and all of these fees. So I linked that in this document so that you can go in. It goes straight to the athletics page, and then you can click on the athletic on the sport, and then it shows you what Provo and Timview are doing in each of those particular cases. The second piece of this is we know athletic facilities cost a ton of money. We know that, but they're built into the cost of the building, like an auditorium is, a gym is. Those are just spaces that we have, and we do feel like our community benefits from that. That would have to be a complete philosophical change as to what the purpose of a comprehensive high school is. That's a much larger piece. Just so you know that there are some expenses that do come out, such as if I'm a wrestling coach, I'm going to need to replace the wrestling mats every X number of years, and those might be $30,000 to $50,000. So principals are finding that money within their budgets to do that.
And some of the teams actually charge
Charge
an equipment fee,
yeah.
which they can. They can carry that over and then pay for it.
Pay for it
at
that
the
way.
replacement, like the helmets. That's
They recondition helmets, and so that comes in as an equipment fee. And then I did link in here a high school athletic stipends page that just kind of shows you, so the green is Provo High and the orange is Timpview High. It shows you the number of coaches, and I based these salaries off of a coach that is a first-year coach with no experience. So obviously these numbers might be higher if you have a coach that has, say, 10 years of experience or something like that. And then looking at the total number of players, what it costs per player. This is where we are expending money. Like, this is where our personnel is coming in, and you can see those amounts there.
Is that total just for fall or for the whole?
So that's fall, then you'll see it has winter athletics there, then it has spring, and then I didn't get the numbers on the annual activities soon enough, so I don't have those specifically. But you just notice that it takes a lot of time for these individuals to be dedicating to this. So we could go through and start saying, well, maybe we don't need 15 football coaches, let's drop it to 12, or let's drop this by 1. I mean, when I start looking at those savings, you might be able to eke out $50,000 to $80,000 in that. I just feel like with the amount of time that our coaches put into things, I gave
especially if they're not a teacher.
Yes, exactly. And when you look at, I put in the estimate here at best, a restructuring of the assignments might result in a $50,000 cost savings, but we have a hard time filling some of our coaching positions, and it's hard to recruit them, and they deal with a lot of issues. There's a lot of liability and responsibility placed on them. They deal with a lot of parent issues, community, all of those pieces, and so I put in here, in a season, a coach might put in 300 to 375 hours. That's at a minimum the amount of time that they're putting in. That's if they're putting in approximately 25 extra hours a week, and what that looks like across the course of their season. And some seasons, like cheer, are much longer than an actual season, and so those hours are going in much, much higher. So even suggesting a head coach being at $25 an hour, I would say that's probably closer to $15 an hour, with your assistant coaches sitting at less than $10 an hour once you start looking at that. So I get concerned about putting more burden on this. We really then would need to have a larger conversation about what is the role of athletics, and I feel like it's a big part of our culture, and that's just a huge decision. So that's why that hasn't been part of it at this point. Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I want to thank you for that, because I've wondered, and I've had people in the community ask me, and so it's just good clarification, because we want to make sure that we are looking at programs equally rather than favoring some. And there is the idea that we definitely favor athletics, but I think in this budget discussion, this was very good to have so that people can see that we have, we've looked at it, and in my opinion, it's not worth the up to $50,000 savings to have all of that upheaval and try and figure it out. So.
Also, just to add, sorry, you need to just, for information, some of those are 3 different, like you look at football, it's really 3 teams.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes they're divided on Thursday nights, and the team goes here, team goes there.
You have to have that personnel,
So
or you can't
need that
cover it.
personnel. Yeah, so you just,
Jason.
One other thing I would add is that, I would really categorize it more as extracurriculars, because you've got all types of things on here, like the dance and the play, the fall play, and those types of things. And so all of these are activities to support our students participating at the high school.
Thank you. And I think there's been a really good, I think HR has done a really good job of going through and defining, like, what's a reasonable amount of coaches, what's the appropriate pay. In that spreadsheet, you'll see that there's stipend amounts, and it tells you what level they're on and what that looks like. So there's been a lot of thought into this. So
there's also the other costs that, like, they're bringing in
they
revenue when we go to a football game. We have to have paid to get in. So I don't know if there's a way we could put another line item in there to show, like,
how much does it generate?
Yeah.
Well,
I know some of them are still probably in the negative, but
Most of them actually, I mean, they subsidize the programs with their 0060. You know, they're the referees and some of the travel, depending on whether they've actually built that into their cost of their fee. But for the most part, they have come close to breaking even for the most part. There's a couple of activities that, I mean, it could be a lot more expensive, but they're trying to keep it a lot more reasonable for families.
Well, and also those, like I think when you see the variation in participation fees, you have to think about how many times are they competing, how many refs are at each event, what does that actually look like, because that's what we pay into UHSAA to cover all of those things. And so that's what a student is helping to pay for. But a good gate at a football game will bring in an easy $20,000-$25,000. Like between your concessions and your ticket sales, you can bring in a sizable amount of money too. So that sport then is going to subsidize a sport that is costing more money. So, you know, we may be frustrated that why does football get all of this attention? It's like it also makes all X, Y, and Z also possible in that process. So.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So on this budget part of the discussion, the discretionary school budget, we need to make a decision on, so we'll bring that back maybe in another meeting, right?
That was going to be a lot easier once we have legislative.
Okay.
I think we even wait till we get the legislative amount.
The other two though, are you suggesting we move forward with that unless there's objection by the board?
Yes, I think so. I
Okay.
think those two would be good things to move forward with.
So is there any objection from the board on the FTE for high school special ed and the buyback? Okay.
Okay.
will we be voting on those tonight?
I think that's just more like.
That's more
It's just giving us direction, and then we'll build our
Yeah.
budget based on that direction that you've given us. So when you vote on the budget, that's when you're voting on it.
And then the legislative session ends next Friday. So, what is that day? The 6th, I think. So on the 10th, we have a meeting, but it's probably going to be too soon for Devin to have concrete numbers, but we'll start
We
to
don't
have.
get numbers till April 1st.
Yeah, we'll have a general
of an idea.
sense. So maybe by our all-day meeting at the end of March, we can start having some of those conversations, but not specific numbers yet, right? So, and then long-term, we have other big decisions that could impact the budget in the future, such as we've been looking at DLI and things like that, right? So just so the public knows, I think we're finalizing a lot of what the shorter-term decisions are, or the immediate decisions, but there's some ongoing conversations still coming, so. And when will we have an idea of the specifics for insurance impact this year?
I should have something. We're in the process of the RFP. I'm waiting for February for February 2025 to drop off our projections, because February of 2025 was a little catastrophic to our insurance.
Okay.
Once that goes through, then they can take the 12-month and give me a pretty good idea. Right now, they're looking at another 30% increase based on February of 2025 numbers. I believe that we could possibly be relatively flat once we get that February 2025 off.
Okay. We hope everyone who had a hard February 2025 is doing okay.
We all hope so.
So maybe something for all-day meeting where we would have more information about that.
We should. We'll actually have the contract signed by then.
Okay.
Okay.
For our new, for whoever's selected on the insurance. So I should have some better ideas by then.
Okay, thank you. All right, we will now move on to item 8, our CAS recommendations. So last time we spent a great deal of time in this meeting talking about CAS and the possible directions, and just we didn't have clarity on what was, anyway, reflecting on that, realized maybe we had kind of gotten a little off track of what our role as a board is, and so I went to Wendy and said, why don't you guys are the experts, why don't you guys recommend what you would like to do, bring it to us as a proposal, and then we can then move forward on, ask questions, do we support this? Do we want to modify it? But at least we've got a direction
Yeah.
that has been chosen. So, Wendy, I'll turn it over to you.
Sounds good, and I've got Judy, my wingman here, to
Yes,
help
I'm
me
sure
through some
Judy's
things.
been
She's
highly
gonna-
involved in this
she's
as well.
been very involved and very helpful.
She's awesome.
So this document was created just so that it kind of captured everything we've been talking about. We don't need to rehash all of that for the purposes of this meeting, but it goes through and talks about the history of CAS for those who might not understand or know what's been going on. But really, our CAS proposal is to recommend a change. We feel like that we've had enough concerns kind of placed at our feet that some of the short-term solutions that we've tried to put in place have not netted the results that we want. And so we want to restructure it in the hope that it will support our students better. So we feel like there is a mission statement that's tied to this, that we're trying to provide appropriately challenging, differentiated instruction and social and emotional support to ensure advanced learners demonstrate continuous academic growth, develop critical and creative thinking skills, and cultivate leadership and resilience. This mission statement could certainly be refined by the new program as they're kind of getting their feet under them. But I just felt like we needed to state, what is it we're trying to do with this program? What are we trying to accomplish? And then laid out some goals that we really want our students that are in those upper percentiles to be challenged daily. That's something that came back from the CAS survey, is that parents across the board in the district, not just in CAS, but want their students to be challenged, but particularly in CAS. And ensure that gifted learners experience sustained academic growth by exploring those standards at a much more complex and advanced level. They can develop advanced reasoning, they have opportunities for creativity and also independent thinking, and then supporting their unique needs by placing them in a group with, and like peers. We've heard that from several emails from students and parents that this has been a positive thing for their children, and so how do we create a program that will continue to provide that positive environment for them, but also be restructured in such a way that it meets the rigor that I think people would like to see. So the specific proposal is what Judy and her team proposed initially in November, but we would like to provide a magnet site. We have talked with Principal Hawkins, and we'll talk a little bit more about Westridge Elementary School as being that site, beginning with a 4th grade cohort for the 2026-2027 school year. Then you add 5th grade, then you add 6th grade with each year. And then that team is supporting that 4th grade cohort for next year, they're developing those curriculum notebooks about what this looks like to take those 4th grade level standards, and how are you challenging the thinking, and what kind of complexities do we need to add to that, so that then 4th grade teachers across the district could be supported the following year, and we could start to support those high achieving learners in their neighborhood schools. So it has those two parts, and we just continue to expand that. So each year just add a new grade level to that process. We put in here why a magnet site. We really feel like enrichment is different from truly gifted and talented instruction, and really asking teachers to differentiate within a typical 4th grade classroom from students who have some really challenging learning challenges to students that are in the 98th percentile. That's a big lift for teachers to manage and meet all of their needs. And so the magnet site is helpful in that process. And in talking with Judy, I think we also were looking at the lift that this would require of our team. To go in and look at curriculum notebooks and to develop that team, it would be comprised of Judy, Tatum and Jerry, those are our math and reading specialists, and Becky, who will kind of be almost a type, she's our science specialist, but also be tasked with gifted and talented. She's going to go through a gifted and talented endorsement, and so hopefully help support teachers who wanted to do that at the same time. We don't want to add more people at the district office into this process. We want to utilize the people that we have, and then as we help support this this magnet site, then those same resources could be pushed out to neighborhood schools. We did put in here why Westridge, a reboot requires a new location. We're concerned with running two models side by side with each other, and kind of, we don't, we want to make sure that this really truly is a reboot, and that there are specific assurances that are provided to the parents that will be part of this. And then principal leadership, we feel like Principal Hawkins, she's developed some really great positive relationships with district departments. She has a really collaborative culture at her school, and she has a culture of data use that is really important. And her teams use that frequently, and that's a piece that's going to be a major part of our assurances for our parents, because we need to ensure our parents that we have the data to show that their students are doing better and are benefiting by being in this program, and have some solid things there. So the characteristics, we would have the 1 4th grade class at Westridge in the fall of 2026. The position for this teacher would be posted and hired specifically for this assignment. They would be required to have a gifted and talented endorsement or an agreement to obtain it within 1 year. They would have to demonstrate a willingness to implement the curricular standards at the level required. So it's not just they get to take 4th grade and do what they think that would be enrichment, but they've got to agree to work really closely with our district team in that process. We will have to figure out all of the busing pieces, but we can create possibly some neighborhood sites. That would be my preference, is making sure we can bus students to Westridge Elementary for the program so we don't have an equity issue. It might not be that a student walks to their neighborhood elementary and there's a pickup at every single neighborhood, but there could be locusts of places where students would go and then be picked up. That's how I would see that.
And I've already talked to transportation about having 2 or 3 schools that they could meet at, congregate at, and then transfer. He, in his mind, he's already figuring out how to make that work.
I knew he would.
He's really good at that.
It's not just a program that does more, it goes deeper. The 4th grade teacher, I already said, works with teaching and learning, and then it would move into the 5th grade and then into the 6th grade. I think what's important is that that we want to make sure that we also have built-in professional learning for the teachers, opportunities for them to receive coaching and feedback, so that they are feeling the support that they need to be successful in this, and that as we share data with parents, they can see just the tremendous growth that their students can make. And then we created a list of assurances here, just making sure that our program is research-based and that we're utilizing NWEA math, reading, and science to track our student growth. This becomes really important. Number 4, only students who meet the cut score will be invited into the gifted and talented program. And if there are not enough students for this initial cohort, we cannot run the program. We cannot say, well, we've got to have a cohort, so we're just going to keep lowering the bar. We actually need to keep that bar, and that bar should ideally be at the 95th percentile. We have talked about, if we needed to, dropping at 94th and 93rd, but no lower than the 90th percentile. That would be as low as we would be comfortable with it going.
What number would that be?
25 is what we felt reasonable in terms of that. That would be the number of students. So you might invite 60, but 25, we need 25 who are going to accept and commit to attend the program. We want to make sure that we've had situations where I've had parents who've said, well, when a kid goes in to take the COGAT, they'll say, well, don't do well on this, because if you do well on this, then you're going to be taken out of our school. Just like, okay, so we need to work on some messaging about that we're focusing on the opportunity for the student, and that's what needs to happen. We've had some concerns about using the COGAT and making sure that we have appropriate training. That has to be an assurance that is put in place. If Principal Hawkins decided that she felt like we needed to be at an information night, do we need to be out at elementary schools to talk about what this reboot looks like and what the assurances are, and that needs to come from like myself and from teaching and learning and from the And so then number 9 also tacks on to something that will come up in a later board meeting, is that one of the complaints that parents have had is, okay, I put my kids in this advanced program and then they go to middle school and I don't feel like their needs are being met at the middle school. So we will, Daryl and Doug and I just met with the 2 middle school principals today, and we will have a proposal for how to support students in the middle school at our next board meeting so that there's that continuation that happens. We put in place the process for placement using the COGAT screener. And then we put number 2, students who score 1.5 points above the standard deviation would be invited. And then once invitations have been accepted, we will determine if we have enough students for the cohort and how to coordinate busing for them. And then we just put in place a timeline, just mostly because if we are changing location of a program, of a special program like this, we do have to do a public notice, and there does have to be a public hearing. So I would work with Caleb. That public notice would go up tomorrow, and then the goal would be that that hearing would be at the all-day board meeting, and you could make a decision at that point in time as to whether or not you want to change that location, if that's what you choose to do. So your vote tonight, there's kind of 2 parts to it. One is this an acceptable reboot of Gifted and Talented? Do we need to take it back to our team and address some other issues? And then the second piece is, do we start that time clock of the public hearing, because we are changing locations for that, and we can start that process. Emily had asked a question, what happens if we don't have enough students that qualify for the cohort and we've hired this 4th grade teacher? There's a couple of options in that. We could delay the hiring of that individual until we've gone through that process. I don't love that idea, because then that person's getting placed in April, and that's likely going to pull a teacher out of another school. I almost had this thought, and Devin doesn't know that I have this thought, but if that's the case, then maybe that teacher is kept in with teaching and learning to help develop the 4th grade Gifted and Talented, and then that teacher's kind of put on hold, and then when we test the kids the next year, maybe that's the 4th grade. You know, we'd have to talk through that. I don't know if that teacher would want to do that. They might be like, oh, heck no, I don't want to work with Judy in the district office. Are you kidding me? I don't know. So we need to work through a little bit of those logistics there. We have a tight turnaround here, because we've got to get these invitations out, administer the COGAT, make sure people are trained in what that looks like. So it's we tried to put this in place so that you could see what it would look like over the course of the next 3 years. That's a little daunting, so maybe just look at the immediate next steps. Mm-hmm. So we would provide the public notice. Teaching and learning would immediately start beginning, and oh, by the way, they've already started, I think, looking at those curriculum notebooks, making sure that we have the COGAT licenses and have the people trained that are administering it, and then eventually we'll decide if there's a high enough acceptance level to create a cohort. We brainstormed some different ideas here. I don't love Provo Pinnacle. I'm just going to put it out there. I don't like a PP. PP, I don't know, maybe somebody likes that, but I have issues. So, but we were trying to look at, we're welcome, educate, inspire. So do we do something with the mission statement? Obviously, these are just ideas, and maybe it's kids decide. I don't know. And then number 3 is, what about this kind of de facto tracking system that it creates for all students? Because it's a magnet of 30 students when we have, potentially 900, 3rd graders. I don't know that it's creating a de facto tracking system. It is providing these students with what they need. I feel like traditional tracking happens when we place all students into a track. They're tracked from the beginning. There's no movement that can happen. That isn't the purpose of what we're doing here. So, and then I had Tatum, Judy had Tatum, who is our elementary math specialist, just talk a little bit more, and we can present a little bit more on the math pathways that would move into middle school, because we've had some concerns about kids finishing AP Calculus, in 10th grade. What are the benefits of that? And so she's put together some research about not necessarily accelerating, but what we need to do is create those opportunities for students to really explore math at a much deeper level. Doesn't mean that they wouldn't bring in 7th grade standards at times and things to start building that. But the acceleration would really begin in middle school instead as part of that. And so there's just a lot of information here, and she's linked different research that I think is very helpful, and also USBE's guidance on that. So I just wanted that in there as well. So, any questions?
I have one question.
Only one?
Well, to start.
Excellent. Oh, she's just getting started. Oh dear.
No, this is great,
That's
and I
great.
know we have been talking about this since at least last March.
Like,
and
yes,
all-day
a
meeting-
year,
Both
yeah.
all-day meetings, and thank you, Judy, and your team, and everybody,
Seriously.
for dealing with us, kind of just really trying to hash this out,
Yeah,
figure
no,
this out
it's-
as a board.
It's important.
Really quickly, as we're talking about fourth grade, I have got input of like, well, why not start earlier? Why don't we do this cohort in third grade, and then we're testing second graders instead of third graders when there's a heavier testing burden? Can you just speak to that, because that has come up?
Judy, do you want to answer that? I have strong opinions about why it should be fourth grade, but.
If you have strong opinions, I'd say, let's hear
Sure.
them.
Well, my opinion is just it gets really difficult to, I would say third grade is the earliest grade that I would ever identify that at. And so I can see that that's something that we could explore at that point. I feel like that I need to make sure all of our kids have their basic skills of reading and math before I determine that I can pull it to the next, to that next level. And so I do know that there are gifted and talented programs that go all the way down to first grade. I don't think that's appropriate. I just don't, the research doesn't suggest that, so. Judy?
No, I agree, and I think starting with fourth, moving to fifth, moving to sixth, and then if we need to reconsider the idea of third, we really have some experience behind us in really having a gifted and talented program to make those decisions.
So we're not taking it off the table.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
We just, I
Good
just
question.
It was something public people in the public.
That's
has
because
questions about.
Alpine added third grade to their ALL program.
and
Freaking
Canyon
Alpine
starts
in
in
it,
first.
that's why.
Do we have other comments, questions? Gina?
I have a few.
Go for it.
So one of the, and there may be no solving any of this, but it's just something I want to throw out, a couple of these. There was really, I did not have children in the system when it was at one site. But there was a real feeling when I would talk to parents who did have children that it was a very elitist and a very, I don't know, the program was very elitist. How, now we're not, maybe this will be helped by the fact that they're not at their separate site, but how do we keep that, like, I really believe we need to meet the needs of these students. They have, like you said, I call them special needs, special needs on either end of the spectrum, but these unique needs, we need to meet them. How do we keep this, can we keep this from becoming this program that then becomes this elitist thing? Or is that just something that happens external to what
Can I
we?
share my background history from being on the board where that happened? So I don't even know how many years ago, it was probably 5 or 6 years ago. We felt like it used to be a choice in type of thing to go get tested for testing. So then we felt like, okay, then it was just parents who were in the know got it. So we as a board decided to make sure that all third graders got the COGAT screener, which then broadened who was coming in and who was invited to it. But filling 2 cohorts, which we've shown, is very difficult to do. But that's where that history comes from, because it used to be more of a parents got to kind of choice in to get their kids tested, and that's kind of where that
And now parents can choice out. I would
Yeah, they
assume
can
that in
definitely
this way
choice
they can
out. They
choice
could be
out.
like, I don't want my kid tested
Okay.
for that.
And that was one of the things I wanted parents to, who are watching to, I assume so, but I want them to know they can test it out of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like even the screener though, they could say we don't even
We don't
want to
want to do the
Okay,
screener.
so that would be like notifications at home, like we're gonna be doing the screener for all students.
I think the other piece too is, from what I understand, and Judy could speak more to this as well, is that because of that situation, what was happening was even then they wanted specialties. So even when they got put into regular school, then they wanted the specialties to be separate and things like that. We want those core classes, but they're gonna be mixed in with other students in those specialties. So that's the intent.
Specialties, we're talking
PE,
art,
music. Yeah.
Okay.
Did you have more questions or comments?
Go ahead, Judy.
I think the elite feeling happened kind of naturally and without anyone having eyes on it or being aware of it until it moved into the other schools. I think as we approach this at Westridge, we go in with our eyes open and we're intentional about making sure that we don't foster that. And I think there are a lot of ways to do that within a school. I think maybe the elitism almost caught everyone off guard before. It just kind of happened, and then we had this monster that we had to figure out how to deal with. And I think we'll just be more intentional to make sure that doesn't happen.
And then will there be messaging that goes out about the COGAT to the parents, or is it just kind of like,
No,
I feel like, I mean, I even knew that was coming with my kid, and I still don't quite understand it. So, and not that a flyer coming home is going to explain it to me, but I do think that I don't think we need to have it worked out now, but I do think that will be important. And then one last thing, I am worried, and I brought this up last time, I am a little bit worried. I'm worried about some racial disparities, but I'm also worried about economic disparities. Did we see that it was mostly students from upper income that qualified previously? Because if that's the case, then this is going to become an elite program for our more wealthy students, then I'm going to vote against this, because this is not. That's not. They do have special needs, but I struggle that if it's going to become that type of program, I worry about that.
So the one component, so I talked with Michelle about this actually, because she was, because I said, help me answer Gina's question about this. Because one of the segments of the COGAT is a nonverbal part, she felt like that helped us. So if we see a student that really spikes on that part and the other two not so much, then we can go back and go, what's happening here, and is this because we have a language barrier or something else that's occurring? We can use other data points at that point to help solidify that. So that's one piece that we're looking at. I think the other concern that I have is actually when you use NWEA or you use RISE, you're actually still going to have all of those disparities anyway, because we have a huge gap in our proficiency between our wealthier students and our Caucasian students as it is. I actually think this gives us a better chance at getting at it. But one of the things we were even talking with our middle school principals about is how do we help identify students that have the dispositions that might not think that they are, or that we have some preconceived notions, and we just have to go in with our eyes being really intentional about that. The COGAT does also have, the instructions are in Spanish, so if a student does have a language barrier, we can help through that, but the test itself on the parts that are nonverbal are in English. It does ask for that, so.
Thank you.
Lisa, did you still have something?
Well, I guess the only thing I will say is, in terms of the elitism, I think also the messaging and the branding matters. So when you go to something that's called like super awesome preschool as opposed to regular preschool, that doesn't help. And then I think also like the first year we
don't want us to call it super awesome program.
I'm just saying, like, if there's anything around, like, I just think we have to be careful with that. And also in how we talk with parents and students about this, I think messaging matters, because I think it's startling to hear someone tell a child that they are gifted. I don't think that serves that child well, actually. So I think the language around how these conversations happen with students, like trying to help a student find the best environment for their learning, or I remember going to an information night, frankly, and my kid's sitting there, and I'm with a parent, and we've just moved in from out of state, and they open it up by telling these kids how gifted and talented they are and how exciting it is that they're going to be coming into this program, and he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and he's like, what the crap? You know, I mean, so I just think we have to be careful in the language we use, because I think we reinforce a message also that can be harmful for some of these kids about all of this. So I just think, as, you know, like she was saying, keeping eyes wide open going in, that this could be an unintended consequence of the way we talk about it, the way we identify students, the way we frame it for ourselves and parents and educators, right? Like, yes, there's these words in there, but really there are a lot of different forms of giftedness than just academics. And so this is a specific set of domains maybe,
yes,
and we're identifying those domains, but that does not summarize or separate these kids out in terms of hierarchical thinking. And so I think I have to check myself. I think it's good for all of us to look at that. And the language we use will matter. And all the way through the process. And I have really appreciated like reading through the work Judy has done all along on this. I feel like you guys have done such an amazing job of dialing into what we're talking about and what we're not talking about here, and that, anyway.
So what I
that's
hear,
really
Lisa,
important.
is that you're volunteering to help come up with the new name.
No, but I'm telling you the PP thing matters, because kids will take they will take the acronym of whatever their
Oh, yeah.
program is, and they're gonna come up with all sorts of stuff, so don't hand it to them that easily.
I'm just kidding, you don't have to, you don't have to.
No.
Are there other questions, comments?
Yeah, I had a parent that was concerned because her kid missed school the day the test was done last year. And sorry Judy, but she emailed you a lot and you never replied to her. And the parent just pushed and pushed and pushed to finally get her kid tested because she knew he was going to qualify, and he ended up qualifying. But yeah, because he just happened to miss school that day because he was sick. And so it was only because she kept pushing that he even got tested at all.
Can I ask a question about that? So I was reading a couple different districts and their selection processes, and seeing that some of them charge a fee. For example, if you want your child tested again the next year, you pay a fee if you want that retesting. And if a student comes from outside of the district, is that right? I don't know what those lines are, because I know that you sometimes will have students at, for example, a private school or a homeschool setting who then want to come in to do the COGAT. If we need to just have a conversation, or if that's just, there's a law that says they can take this, they can sign up for this. But I've been in the district office before when a friend's child is here for the COGAT testing, and I know that their placement has been outside of the district, and then depending on how they place, does that make sense? Whether or not they're coming in. So I just don't know if some of that it is expensive to administer the COGAT.
The
licenses
licenses can be.
So anyway, that's just something I wanted to throw out too. Like, I don't know what the rules are about that, but I feel like that wouldn't be unreasonable to look at what is the best practice there. Yeah.
My main concern is just with like, if we're gonna say it's 1.5 standard deviations, or we're gonna say percentile, because that can be a little bit wishy-washy. So I think we need to decide what that number is and not change it from there. Meaning, if we're gonna say it's the 90th, but that's not technically 1.5 standard deviations, that is 93rd is 1.5. So we gotta be really careful about what number we're using and stick with it and not change that to fill the class, which is what we've done.
Well, that's music to Judy's ears
I
right
agree
there.
with that
And all of ours,
Yeah.
for sure.
I agree.
I have a question, kind of goes along with what Lisa was talking about. What about parents that want to bring kids from outside the district into this program?
So
Because this is an expensive program that we're going to be running.
So that student's going to bring in some WPU, but it has to be prioritized for our students, right? So that would only happen if we can't fill the cohort or something, and then someone wants to bring it from the outside. We'd have to look at that. But I feel
Because we currently have people in CAS.
we do have
district.
people in CAS that are from outside the district. So in my mind, if you're coming in to test your student and your goal is you want to see if they can qualify for it, and I'm just talking off the cuff, so I may change my mind tomorrow after Judy talks some sense into me, or Devin does, or Jared. But in my mind, it's okay if that happens, but they don't get to bump somebody that qualifies that lives within our boundaries.
Yeah.
So
It's
because
if there's space.
it's if there's space.
But it
So
could be an advantage if we
it could be an
to
advantage
keep-
if we need to get to
Yeah.
the 25, and that helps us in that process.
And do we say then at any given year that we don't fill a class, we don't run that class? Does that make sense?
So that's a great question. We were talking a little bit about that, and I feel like once we've established that cohort and it goes, then in my mind, if it drops below the 25, it would have to drop below that number 2 years in a row before I could argue that this is representing a trend, unless there was something really extreme where it was like, well, 3 students have accepted, or something. Then I'm like, oh, we got to rethink that. But you know, because it goes to 21 one year, and then it goes back up the next year. I think sometimes you have to do that. I think we were also thinking about utilizing a similar kind of concept with DLI, like if we're ever gonna look at a language, like if we need to, you know, decide that we're not gonna offer a language, do we use those first grade enrollments, and what would that number be to continue carrying the cohort, and for how many years, and what does that look like? So I think we'd wanna be consistent.
All right, so in our business meeting tonight, we will be voting on approving this recommendation. And then also, we'd like to start the process for a hearing for a location change. So. All right, thank you, and thank you to Judy and team as well for all the hard work on that. Okay, next is our first readings of policy. We've got like 10 minutes. Do we want to start now or just
Let's
save
do it all
all?
let's do it all in business meeting, and I will be really fast.
Okay, so we will save both of our policy items for our business meeting. After we adjourn, we will have a few minutes, and then we will start our public hearing at 6 p.m. at the PDC, followed by our business meeting. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
A second. Second?
No, you get to
first.
Oh,
You're the
first.
first.
You can say
I'm
so
just
moved.
entertaining
You
it.
can say so moved.
Oh my gosh, I was multitasking. I move we adjourn our meeting.
Okay, motion made by
Study
Board
session.
Member Van Wagenen.
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Boyce. We are adjourned.
I did almost what you did. It's like one of the words I'm supposed to say.
Some of the words I say in meetings, I don't know what they are.
I don't
It's
try
a
to be
rope, and so then you get on the wrong rope.